Chris Schleyer, thanks a lot for doing this. I really appreciate it. When I started this channel, you were one of the people I thought, man, I got to get Chris in here and do an interview. So
I know I've
seriously,
been avoiding you for a while.
seriously, this is awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this because it's not always fun.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what does a guitar tech carry every day on the road? Like, screwdrivers, strings. What do you got? Do you have like
Yeah,
a pouch?
yeah.
What do you
Well,
got?
uh, depends on the gig, really. If you're fortunate enough to be on a tour with a semi and you can bring your work box, the multiple drawers that has everything you need, then great. Otherwise, you're forced to do the travel Pelican, routine and strip it down to your basic necessities. And I guess what are those necessities? Well, you need a string winder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like basic, and nothing worse than having to turn those tuning pegs by hand, right? So you need to have a string winder, that little tool, and a good pair of cutters, wire cutters. Nothing worse than having those strings all looped up around the headstock. You want to trim them down nice and tight. And a good tuner. You don't have to have the best tuner in the world. A lot of guys still use Boss tuners on their pedal boards on stage. So if that's the case, you might as well use the same one they're using, right? So it's just that kind of whatever works for you. Soldering iron is good to have. Doesn't have to be a fancy, expensive one. It's just even the single one without the gauge, you can plug straight into an outlet and heat up and solder some guitar cables. You know, that's always handy because there's always shorts happening on patch cables, guitar cables. So if you have that, that's a good start. You can do a lot of setups, with your feel and your eyes. So I don't think you need all the gauges and all that stuff unless you're really getting into some serious repair work. But if you start with that, I think that's a good place to start. Good pair of wire cutters, a string winder, and a tuner. Some string polish, and a nice cloth, is good to have. Light, headlamp. You want a headlamp. And a magnifying glass is always good too.
Yeah, I didn't
I
think of
can
that.
keep going, but this is a good place to start. You can really get in there and see things with a magnifying glass that you can't see with regular readers. And if you're going to do any kind of nut work or nut polishing, you can really get in there and see those grooves with the magnifying glass. But yeah, screwdriver, obviously, Allen wrenches for adjusting some truss rods. Those are always handy. But you don't need a whole lot, to do a good job and set up a guitar nicely. If you have some experience and kind of know what spots to adjust, what knobs to turn, and screws to tighten, so to speak.
Before you go on tour, do you get any kind of documentation that the guitar player or the bass player that you're working with, they use a Boss rack mount and they use GHS strings and they use Dunlop picks, so you're prepared for that, or do you just go and then you do a rehearsal and find out then is there a rhyme or reason on how you get that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Sometimes you have an opportunity to talk to the guy or girl, or, whoever your client is, and find out what they need. Otherwise, it's more casual, and you show up and you meet for the first time, and you just kind of pick their brain and see what they have, and go that way. But it's always a learning curve and getting to know the type of player they are, and uh, it's a lot that goes into it with the different personalities, and a lot of people. There's people that are very specific on what they want, and other people could care less. Like they'll just whatever's there, they're happy to have.
Do you find that more often than not, players just don't care and they're like, well, the last tech or so and so takes care of this for me. I really don't know. Or are people really into what they use? I use Seymour Duncan pickups, DeMars you in the neck, or what is it
Yeah, I
usually
think
like?
most players are pretty set on what they're used to hearing, and it's very specific. Uh, what you're used to hearing, is going to change if the pick type changes, right? It's not going to have the same feel, so it's not going to hit the string the same, and it's not going to respond the same, which is going to affect how they're hearing it. So I think that players that have their sound and have been doing what they do for a while, they know what works for them, and that's kind of what they want to stick to.
What makes a good guitar tech?
Um, what makes a good guitar tech? Guitar tech has to be able to read the player. Definitely, read the room, man. Right?
Yeah.
Nothing worse than walking in and seeing your tech like ripping all over your guitar. You know what I mean? It's like, that's fine. A lot of guitar techs play guitar and that's all good, but I think there's a time and a place for everything. So I like to keep that stuff over here on days off in my hotel room. And then when I'm working, I'm checking this and checking that, making sure that everything is set and ready for the show. And it's really not how I want it to be. It's how they want it to be. And it's how it was yesterday and the day before that and the day before that, and making sure that it's like that tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. Because the environment's always changed. So you always have to be ready to adapt to different environments and make it work.
So consistency is probably the biggest thing you would say.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're working with like an indie band where they're more songwriter driven, don't go out and rip some Eddie Van Halen before they get on stage when the crowd's loading in.
Yeah. It's a funny story. There's a really well-known guitarist. I'm not going to mention any names, but his favorite guitar tech was a guitar tech that knew nothing about the guitar. Because he knew that he would never walk in and find the guy like just ripping on his gear, or, you know what I mean? Just like shredding on his guitar, or, he was just like, he knew what he needed to do and that's what he could do. And he didn't have to do anything more than that. And this guitar player was quite happy to have someone that was so well trained, and kind of knew the boundaries, because he like couldn't go anywhere else because he was stuck within these very set boundaries, because he didn't know anything about guitar other than how to set it up the way that he wanted it set up. Didn't know how to play guitar. So, it was some techs are very hands-on and know exactly what their rig is and how to set it up and all the ins and outs, and some have no idea. So it's just really finding out what they need and how to make their job easy for them, right? So you're here to facilitate so they have the best show they can have. And leave your ego behind.
It's kind of like when you take your car to the repair shop and you get in and the seat's all different. You can tell that the radio's cranked. Hey, I didn't have my stereo set like this. And why is my console like? It's like having your guitar is a very personal thing that you're letting somebody else mess with, and you're trusting them to do the right thing by you.
Exactly.
And if you come in and it's like,
if I set it up for me, they're going to come in and pick it up and be like, what the hell happened, right? Yeah. So it's you just kind of have to know what's best for your client, who you're working for.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it comes with, I guess, experience, and really knowing that you're here to facilitate and do whatever you need to do so that they have the best show that they can have.
Yeah, because that's
why you're here,
is, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So where did you grow up, Chris?
I grew up outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, in a small town called Fort Thomas, Kentucky.
What was your first guitar?
My first guitar was, I think it was like a Harmony, something like that. It was a real fat, hollow body with a really big neck, fat neck. It was horrible. It was like an old jazz guitar. Probably wasn't even a harmony. I don't know, but it's what I had. But the first real guitar I had was a Kramer Pacer.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I had a few guitars. I had a G&L at one point. That's a real guitar. That was a great guitar. My first guitar that basically was like, other than that horrible harmony jazz whatever guitar monstrosity, was just probably $150 Strat, generic Strat, beginner sunburst guitar with cheap whammy on it, which I thought was super cool. It wasn't a Floyd Rose. It was just the old school. It wasn't a Bixby either. It was just cheap, spring whammy bar. But it was an awesome guitar. I loved it.
Were you able to pick up songs immediately, or did you slow down records, or did you just know, hey, look, this is how that's played?
Yeah.
How did that work?
When I started playing guitar, I immediately started taking guitar lessons at the local music store, which is what you did back in the day before YouTube, So it was, you buy your Mel Bay book, you learn your music staff and the notes, and you learn how to play first position, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and all that stuff, which I think is a great way to start because it establishes a great kind of theory, baseline, right? But learning how to read basic first position, easy stuff. Ear training, you're starting to pick up, this finger here and then that finger there is that interval. And then you hear that on a record, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can picture that in my head where he's putting his fingers, because I know where those sounds are and where my fingers have to go to make those sounds. So it was both. It was like learning from a book and listening to records and learning by ear as well. And then having a guitar teacher to go to and be like, hey, what does this mean? What are these? If I put my hand here, what is that? Right? Because it's going to be something, right? Oh, that's a 9 sharp 5, 13, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, cool.
Did you have bands in your small town, or did you just take lessons and then move out of state, or what was the process to get to California?
To get to California, well, it was a long road from when I started at 10 to when I went to California. But yeah, there is that progression where, I have a guitar, and then you're in high school and it's like, that guy, he plays bass. What? You have a bass? Yeah, my dad has a bass. I play bass. Great. Awesome. Let's get together. Oh yeah, so-and-so has a drum kit. Oh, no way. And then you go and you're like in their basement and you're like, don't know any songs, but you're kind of playing parts of songs that you each know. And it's like, sound terrible, but it's just awesome. Right? So that's how it starts. And then it's like, we got a singer now? There's a guy that can actually sing? Right? And then the cover band is formed. Local bar scene. Yeah. So that's kind of like where I came from. And then I always wanted to move to LA because it was the 80s, and that was kind of the thing back then, Hollywood and the Hollywood Strip and all that. So I was a little late to the party, but it's kind of what I saw back in Kentucky is everything that was cool was happening in California. So I couldn't wait to get out there and see what was going on. Of course, when I got there, it was like over.
So what did you do when you got to California then? Were you taking lessons? Did you go to school? Did you have odd jobs and bands?
Great question, man. After high school, actually, I was like, I wanted to move straight to California from high school. And my parents were like, nope, you have to go to college. And I was like, and they're like, yeah, well, you can study music if you want, but you have to go to college, right? Well, I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. If I can study guitar and major in guitar and do that, then I guess that's okay. I'll do that. So I went to college, to a small college in Illinois, Pelican University, a private school. But the thing about it is they had a full 24-track analog recording studio. And this was like 1992. So having any access to any kind of like recording gear or learning how to use all the knobs and figure out what everything does was like, that's what I wanted to do. I figured, well, eventually I'll make it to LA, but I'll actually maybe know something by the time I get there, right? That will help me. So got a bachelor's degree in what is called commercial music with the emphasis on guitar performance.
So you were actually learning things that were going to help you out later for sure when you went there.
Yeah.
The recording environment is something that is invaluable to what you do now.
Yeah. I mean, probably would have been okay not to know some things before going out there. Because, you have to take some music business classes, and some things are probably better not to know. It's like, oh, I know better than this. You're not supposed to ask me to do that. Where's my union rep?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm not in the union. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So you did you graduate there in Illinois, and then how did you get to California?
Yeah. Graduated. One of the happiest days of my life was leaving that that campus, even though I have so many great memories and love it to death, but I could not wait to get to California, man. So I went home for the summer, worked a bit, tried to save up some money, and moved to California. Packed up my guitars in the car and drove west. And when I got there, I didn't want to just show up and not do anything, so I signed up for Musicians Institute. And I went to the Guitar Institute of Technology. I didn't do the whole year. I think I did 6 months. And I kind of felt like needed to be just playing in a band or something. And I was kind of over being the student in a classroom, right? But it was something to do when I got there, and got to see some amazing players and kind of like you gauge the competition, But there's a lot of guys that, they're so into like the look and hanging out on the corner with the guitar and looking cool and everything. And I just really wasn't into that. So I left. And I just started looking for ads in the newspaper for guitar wanted, guitar players wanted, songwriters looking for guitar player, whatever. And kind of did that for a while, and you kind of get lost in that whole sea of, it is a sea of, I don't know, something, but yeah. You're very, very fortunate if you can find solid talent, to play with going that route, right?
Yeah.
And it's like shooting darts in the dark, But I was really, really lucky and ended up getting a job at a music store, and the manager of the music store happened to be managing this artist from Cleveland, of all places, who was starting a band and needed a guitar player, and they were going to be signed on a major label. And it was like, what? I didn't need to go to MI at all. I just had to come here and get this job at the CD store and then meet this guy. And then, so, you just got to get out there and it's all who you know, and being able to produce, I guess, when on the spot, right?
Yeah.
And not freak out when given the opportunity, even though you are freaking out.
Yeah, keep it cool.
Keep it cool.
Just don't let everybody know what's really going on.
Right, exactly.
So is that how you got in Prick, the band Prick?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the guy manages the record store, manages this artist,
Yep.
and
It wasn't even called Brick at that time. It was just this guy.
this guy.
Yeah, was working with this other guy. You know,
Yeah.
that was having his record produced by this other guy, and they were still figuring everything out. But it was like I was there at the right place at the right time, you know, and I still had to audition. You know, I had to go through all that, go meet the people, and then I go learn songs, go into a rehearsal studio, and that whole awkward thing, you know, where you go in and play a few songs, and then you leave, and then you hope to get called back, you know, or hear something the next day. But yeah, like I said, just kind of walked into it, and it seems like that's how it happens, right? It just happens organically like that.
And then I'm assuming that the talent that you were in the room with during those auditions were a lot different than those newspaper ads that you would show up at somebody's house or garage and it's just like,
Yeah.
what the hell am I doing here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is, you know, it's like, wow, okay, so this is what I've been waiting for. This actually is the real deal. Yeah. Pretty intimidating. But that's how you learn, right? You jump in the deep end and learn how to swim.
So you obviously got called back. What happened after you got that call back? Did you guys work on the album any, or was the album done, or how did that come about after the call?
The album had already been started being recorded. I think half of it was probably done. A lot of demos were done, but Kevin McMahon, the singer for Prick, was going to go to England and have some of the record produced by a different producer. And Trent Reznor was going to executive produce those songs. So there was an opportunity for me to go to London with Kevin and play on the record a bit, which was amazing. First time I'd ever been out of the country, you know, let alone in a recording studio environment that wasn't like college, you know. And it was at the Manor in Oxford, England, which is a pretty well-known recording studio that a lot of historic bands have recorded, like Black Sabbath. Like, yeah, you can look it up, but it was intense. Old English Manor. We all lived in this house for 10 days, and they had a studio in the barn, you know, old brick, or not brick, it was like stone barn kind of structure, and yeah, proper recording environment, you know, great sounding drum room. Yeah, it was just awesome. And then, so me and Kevin and Andy Kubashevsky, drummer who played on the Prick record, we went over and spent 10 days there with Warren Livesey, the producer that produced Midnight Oil, Beds Are Burning.
Let's give it back.
Yeah, awesome experience.
Were you able to use what you learned in school in the studio, or was it just like, oh, this is totally different?
No, it's completely different because I'm completely overwhelmed as having to like be a guitar player now, right? So it's like, then you're thinking your brain just like switches to a different, like switches sides, right? It's like the artist side, engineer side, two different sides of the brain.
Sure.
So sure, I mean, it helped because I understand the process now and I kind of know what things do, but on the other hand, you kind of want to forget all that and just try and be creative, right? And play well. So.
Were you given a lot of creative freedom on that, or was it like the producer said, okay, this is what I want, can you deliver this for me?
Pretty much that. It was, yeah, pretty much directed, but that's okay. You know, the parts were already written. Basically, it was just performing and coming up with sounds, you know, so I took some pedals with me, like in my suitcase, but like we rented a Marshall head and cabinet and a couple of guitars, and we had a Strat and a Les Paul. But, you know, we just, like I said, we were there for 10 days, and basically overdubbing and recording drums, recording guitars and vocals. So it was amazing just to kind of see that whole process, happening for real, right? And instead of just like imagining that it's for real when you're working on your like senior project.
When that album came out, the shift in music was pretty crazy. I mean, you had like the bands like Motley Crue and Dokken and Rat that were good. And then you had like the Nirvana stuff that was going on and Smashing Pumpkins, which is also good.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have this whole, it was called industrial, but it was industrial metal or rock. Were you guys doing anything crazy with the guitars, or was it pretty straightforward and they manipulated it later because they didn't have a lot of the tools that we have today where you can put it through like I don't know, some kind of weird pitch shifter that's a plug-in or something.
We had an Eventide.
And that's
we had some stuff. Yeah, we had Eventide and whammy pedal. Yeah, we had some stuff.
but you still came up with a lot of cool stuff.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Minimalist.
Yeah, and I know Warren, the producer, also he would bring in things like a long cylinder. It was all the stuff that you read about, or like, oh yeah, Zeppelin recorded the drums, actually mic'd the end of a cylinder to get that sound. And so we tried a bunch of stuff like that. And a lot of times it sounds terrible, but then sometimes it's like, whoa, that's really cool.
Yeah. And you guys were going to tape with that? Or
mm-hmm. Yeah.
No tools at that time?
No, there were sequencers, but everything was going to tape.
Wow. That's crazy to think about because it's so futuristic, especially at that time.
Cubase.
Yeah. There was nothing like the 9 Inch Nails, like let's call it the 9 Inch Nails sound, because it's all in that ballpark.
The day I showed up in London to start that recording was the day that Kurt Cobain died.
Oh.
I remember showing up at the studio, literally the day I arrived, go into the studio and MTV's on and it's all about Kurt Cobain died. And it's like, which you brought up earlier about the whole shift in music. Yeah, true. It's like growing up in the 80s, everything was all technical and all flashy, and now it's early 90s, and you want to sound like you don't even know how to play guitar, right?
Yeah.
That's cool now. It's like, why did I spend all that time learning how to play? I studied classical and all this stuff, but I can just play like this. Teenage, Smells Like Teen Spirit? That's what they want?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds great. It's got that warble sound on it and everything. And okay. So there's a lot more to it than like all this technical stuff. It's really just about the whole experience and the whole sound, which was a great change. Like it was something new and fresh to me I'd never heard before. Hearing guitars like 9 Inch Nails compared to what you're used to hearing traditionally from guitarists and rock bands, like night and day. It's like, whoa, this is awesome, right?
Yeah, it's crazy because you listen to like the Prick album, or you listen to like the 9 Inch Nails stuff, and it sounded like it was just out of this world. It was just like, because like you just said, technical, George Lynch, Steve Vai, like perfection.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that stuff.
And then,
but on the other hand, it's like I love all that stuff that sounds like mistakes too.
Yeah. So
and noise.
When you went into Prick, then you were able to take like a Nirvana attitude with the finesse of Joe Satriani or something. Would you say?
I don't know. I pretty much had to throw all that shit out the window.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at one point, I even told myself, you might not even want to play guitar for a couple of years, and then come back to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because like you're overthinking this stuff way too much.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's almost like you had to just be, I don't know, like a stylistic Well, drummer, because you're like beat the shit out of the guitar, right?
Yeah.
You're not like worried about intonation all the time. It's
Right.
more of a like just a
Yeah.
onslaught of noise, but with notes. It still sounds cool.
Oh yeah, it
It's
all
not
fits.
just like-
All fits and all
Yeah.
fits in there and works, and yeah, it does what it's supposed to do. But it's like you're going about it a completely different way than you're used to.
Was there a player, or were there players, or a producer, or did that experience really change? I mean, you talked about it earlier about how your mindset changed, but was there players or performance performers or anything that made you think, oh wow, I need to do more of this or less of that or anything?
Yeah, when the Garbage record came out, you mentioned Garbage earlier. Butch Vig, right?
Yeah.
The way he produced guitars and guitar sounds and stuff, that was pretty eye-opening, ear-opening, because it's very processed and loopy sounding, whereas before loopy sounding playing wasn't really a thing. But now all of a sudden it's like you want to sound like you've been sampled and you're being looped, right? Which is another crazy way to like think about it, coming from a traditional guitar player type background, right? So now everything is just totally out the window. You got to sound like you can't play. All your stuff has to sound like it's broken, and you just want to play the same thing over and over and over again. It's got to be cool. You don't want to deviate too much. You want to, what I mean? It's like became very loopy and repetitive, but super cool in what it was, right?
So you were focused more on back to the drums, more of a rhythm then.
Exactly, I guess. Yeah, it's just more of like, yeah.
Yeah.
More of the whole flow and vibe of it instead of like, oh, well, I could be playing this mode of this scale because it works with this chord. Out the window.
Yeah, what comes to mind is like Eddie Van Halen, like those first albums. He's playing the riffs, but he's also like a lot of whittle in there.
Yeah,
But
sure.
then all of a sudden that goes out the window. Your sound doesn't sound like that anymore. And now you're this whole new thing.
And I'm listening to Ministry, I'm listening to Nine Inch Nails, and getting into more electronic music, listening to Depeche Mode. Right now, all of a sudden, I like keyboards. I never used to like keyboards.
Yeah.
So that happened. But yeah, first time I saw Nine Inch Nails, I saw Robin Fink play. And you asked earlier, like, what guitar players kind of stand out. And he was one of the ones that I saw in that transitional period that like blew me away, because obviously he's a great guitar player, but just the noise and the feedback. And it was so controlled, like the control. That controlled chaos, controlled noise and everything, that was like totally new to me, which was really exciting and different.
So you finished the album with and overseas, and then what happens? Do you sit around, rehearse, or
come back and you go back to your job in the warehouse, packing boxes and stuff, and hope that you get a good slot on a tour opening up for someone cool, And eventually we did. We only really, we were a lucky band, and I wonder why. It's probably who produced the record had so much, to do with it, and the label that they were on, that Prick was on. It was just like, we never should have had. We were so spoiled, basically. We did one shitty club tour, and then the next thing you know, we're like opening up for Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson in arenas. And then, like, the next thing, we're opening up for Nine Inch Nails and David Bowie, in amphitheaters all over the country, and doing that whole thing.
You get done with the tour, what happens with Prick at that point?
Yeah, so we had a great run, and we did this tour, the Outside tour with Nine Inch Nails and David Bowie. And after that tour, everybody kind of went home, and it was the singer was going to work on some new songs for a new record, and kind of did that for a while, and things just happened, and it just didn't work out, and we just never kind of like picked up, and we had the ball, but we never picked it up and ran with it. You know,
Yeah.
happens a lot.
Yeah.
You get all these great opportunities, but then it's like, well, now what? Okay. I don't know. Now we're going into that whole dark, depressing shit again.
Yeah. so Frick didn't keep going.
So you know what happened actually? Here's what happened. We finished the David Bowie Nine Inch Nails Outside tour.
Yeah.
And Nine Inch Nails were going to do a club tour after that. And they asked Frick to open up. And the singer was sick and wanted to go back to Cleveland and kind of get himself together. Didn't want to do the tour. And I think Helmet ended up doing that tour. And then we worked on some new material. We tried recording some new stuff and put out a few things, but never really was able to like run with the ball. You know, we had a great run. We were super spoiled and probably didn't deserve any of the things that we got to do, but we got to do it, and it was an amazing experience.
So, well, what came next after that?
Well, when I was in Prick, and like I said, it's all who you know, and you know the connections you make and everything. So made some new friends along the way, and after Prick ended, I actually called one of our managers looking for some work. I was like, "Hey, man, I need a gig," and I knew Manson was getting ready to go on tour again, and he was looking for a new guitar player, but they had already gotten someone. So, but he said, "Hey, man, we're looking for a tech if you want to come out and tech. Pogo's looking for a keyboard tech." So if you want to do that, we'd love to have you out. And I was like, tech, huh? How much does that pay? So that's how that all began.
Yeah. What was the learning curve on that? Because you said that you weren't into synthesizers, then you all of a sudden, I like Depeche Mode. And so
Exactly.
what was the learning curve, and how did that go down?
I don't know, man. It's like I always get myself into these situations. It's like you're like way over your head, man. What are you doing? Right? You just figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, so I bought a sampler at that point. I knew how to make some programs and, you know, sample some stuff and trim and edit and assign to MIDI notes and all that, you know. So it wasn't like I was a complete idiot when it came to MIDI and sequencers and keyboards and everything, but it was the perfect timing, really, because being in Prick and being exposed to the whole electronic industrial music scene and all the equipment that comes with that, and then also, okay, now you want to go tech for Pogo with Manson. One of the guys I used to look up to a lot when I was working with Prick and Nine Inch Nails was John Van Eaton, who was Nine Inch Nails tech and did their playback. And it was like, wow, that guy, he knows so much stuff. You know, like he knows how to use all that stuff. He knows everything about all those keyboards, and I want to know all that stuff. So it was just it seemed like I was always eager to just take on whatever and like dive in and just, you know, learn as you go, figure it out. One thing I learned about in college was a reading manual. You know what I mean? It's like never read a book in my life until I went to college and read that manual on that, you know, Yamaha desk or that Tascam tape machine. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I did terrible in high school literature and reading and everything, but I learned how to read a manual.
So you got a lot of manuals, and
Yeah.
were you taking over for somebody else, or was the tour starting, or?
Actually, it was John Van Eaton.
Oh, wow.
John Van Eaton was Pogo's keyboard tech.
Holy cow.
I know.
So you took the guy's spot that you were like, I want to do.
He like trained me.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Wow. What was that like? I mean, obviously it was probably mind blowing.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, wow, I'm really following in the right footsteps here,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was, I was so fresh and so new and I knew so little. I thought I knew so much, but I really knew so little,
Yeah.
But it's a great learning experience, and it's just, learn as you go. We had these horrible MIDI controllers, the old Roland AX, what are they called? AX something? I forget. Guitars, yeah. And they were always malfunctioning because, those guys were pretty intense on stage and always banging and knocking their stuff and throwing water bottles and water getting in everything. So you're always opening up keyboards and putting silicone on top of, contacts so that they don't get wet and start malfunctioning, or just like turning off this MIDI function, that MIDI function, just taking this whole module out altogether, throwing it away, So you basically try and bomb-proof the thing. And eventually you figure it out and you find out everything you got to just, turn off. I don't know what happened. I was like playing and all of a sudden everything went up a half step.
I'm the angel with the scab wings, hot, shot face, wanna powder nose.
Oh, that sucks, right?
Yeah.
Like you hit the transpose button. How'd you do that? I don't know. I did a certain, mixture of buttons here, and that's what happened. All right, I'll get the manual and figure out how to turn that off.
What was it like touring with them? Because it's been pretty well documented that they got pretty dark for a while, and then Manson's making it come back, and he seems to have his stuff together, which is great.
Yep.
But was it like so fresh to the band too at that time, or was it like full?
It was like Antichrist Superstar, and they were working on that record when I was still in Prick, and I remember being in New Orleans with Prick, and they were recording Antichrist at Trent Studio, and Sean Bevan was producing it, and he brought us in the control room, and we're playing us some tracks, like Beautiful People and all that stuff, and it was just, I never heard it before, right? It was just so heavy. It's just like intense, right? It's so awesome. So going from that, and then like seeing the whole progression of the live show, and then all the stuff that comes with, all the protesting and bomb threats and everything. And it's seeing it from the beginning all the way up, it's like we played some shows with Manson at the Whiskey during on their first record, when I was with Prick. So just like seeing the whole progress right there firsthand, it was pretty awesome.
Part of it too, like being behind the scenes, but
Yeah, it was
still
awesome.
being part of it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is pretty crazy. So, did you just finish the Antichrist Superstar tour, or did you go on with them? What came after that tour?
Once you kind of get in the groove, and you start teching or playing or whatever, and you get in, and you get calls like, "Oh, what are you doing after this tour ends?" "Oh, I'm going off to this tour." "Oh, I think they're looking for this or that." "Oh, put my name in the hat." And then you get a call, "Are you available? Would you be interested in doing this tour or that tour?" So I just kind of kept getting some calls to go tech. And the thing after that I was doing was Meat Beat Manifesto.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. I worked for Jack Dangers and those guys for like a year. One of the best times I've ever had as a tech on tour. Just so much fun. The music, obviously, it just leads itself to having fun.
Yeah.
But playing a lot of those clubs in Europe, when you're doing the disco loadouts, they call it disco loadout. You do your show, but then they're having like a discotheque afterwards. So you're like loading out the show, and there's all the people coming in for the disco and disco loadout. The European thing.
What was your tech job on that one?
Pretty much all around Backline. I was the only guy, so I set up the drums, set up Jack's whole rig, which was a giant rack of a mixer and tape machine, tape echo, and we had ADATs playing sequences that were getting converted to controlled voltage to MIDI, and he was basically mixing the whole band on stage through his setup and then sending that to front of house and monitors, right? So just basically set up the whole stage. We had a guitar, we had a theremin, bass player, drummer. Jack had his stuff where he was like playing beats and then like affecting things and mixing the whole thing. And then we had, as the opener, we had Alex Patterson from The Orb was the DJ. So I got to work with him too for a while. Got some great mixtapes from him. Some of the best like mixtapes that you'll never find anywhere that are just his personal. I shouldn't say that. I promise I've never sold one. Or...
So after that, eventually you get into Zeromancer and Kidney Thieves. How did you get there?
So another connection I made from being in Prick, besides John Van Eaton, Sean Bevan, amazing, Billy Howardell, the guitar player, was Trent's guitar tech at the time.
Okay.
And Sean Bevan was doing front of house for Prick, was also Nine Inch Nails front of house guy. Had a friend in LA that was putting a band together that was looking for a guitar player and recommended me for it. And I ended up playing with Kidney Thieves through that connection. Through Kidney Thieves, one of our drummers had some friends from Norway that were going to be in LA recording a record, a band called Zeromancer, and they needed a guitar player to play on the record, which I did. And then they needed a guitar player to come do some shows with them on some festivals in Europe, which I did. And then they needed a guy that would want to come and live in Norway for a year and work on the new record, which I did. And then spent a year or so kind of traveling back and forth from Norway to continental Europe, Germany and Italy, Poland, all that stuff. Go tour for 6 weeks, then go back to Norway, work on some music and some recording, and then go back out, get on the ferry, back to Germany, on the bus, a few weeks, back to Norway, back to the we lived in cottages, I would say. They were cabins out on some property out in the countryside. We had all our rigs set up and computers, and we were doing a lot of the production ourselves. And then we would do some drum sessions in town in Oslo at a proper studio, and did a lot of that for a couple of years.
Was there a big language barrier, or did they speak English?
They speak English really well. They just don't let you know that.
Well, that's not good.
They tend to speak more after they've had a few beers.
Got it.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it's I picked up a bit of Norwegian while I was there. I should have learned more, but you know, I was only there for a year, so it was just the basics. But they were good about speaking English around me, because they felt so bad for me, you know, because they realized they'd been talking Norwegian for the last 30 minutes, and I'm like just sitting there, you know, oh, I think I know that word.
Yeah, and if you're a part of the band, it's kind of important for you to know what's going on.
Yeah, well, you know, some stuff, like I was saying before, it's best not to know. So,
So what happened after Zeromancer?
so after Zeromancer ended, I moved back to LA, and I had some friends that were composers writing music for TV and film. So I did a bunch of that, just helping out, like playing guitar here and there where I could. Had a few opportunities to do some co-writing, which was great. Got me a little bit of residuals that come in, which helps. it's always like cool when you hear hear yourself on TV on some reality show,
Yeah.
and you're like in the middle of Iowa. It's like 2 a.m. in your hotel room and watching like House Hunters or whatever, some biography, History Channel thing, and it's like, "Ah, that music sounds really familiar. Oh, that's me." That actually happened once. So that was really cool. So you did that for a little bit, and then had an opportunity actually to audition for the band A Perfect Circle, and was actually hired to work with them for a couple weeks and get them ready for tour, because James Eha was tied up producing a band in Sweden. And I was going to be James's tech, but I actually got to sit in with the band for a couple of weeks in rehearsals and sit in place of James and get them ready, which was really, really cool.
Who was the band at that point? Because there's a few different lineups of Brothers.
Yeah. Well, Billy Howardell, obviously, and Maynard, and Josh Freese was on drums, and Jordy White was on bass, who I knew from Manson. It was Twiggy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full circle all over again.
A Perfect Circle. And then, of course, Billy was with Nine Inch Nails teching when you were teching.
Yeah.
And playing with Fred, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything's so interwoven. It's crazy. You know, it's like we're all just little molecules, right? Like you've got your nucleus and you've got your electrons all zipping around, right? It's like, that's all we are. It's just a bunch of molecules floating around in space, intermingling, intertwining.
So James comes back and then you start teching for the band.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot of work to be done because all of the sounds needed to get programmed into the Fractal. So basically, that's what I was hired to do, was to start getting all of James's sounds ready so that when he showed up for rehearsals, everything was ready to go. So I would program sounds in the Fractal, go in, rehearse with the band so that they could rehearse and play. And then it'd be like, okay, see you tomorrow. Be back. I'm going to go do some programming, take the Fractal home, tweak it, come back the next day. Learn the songs just in case something happened, you know, James wasn't available, then maybe I'd have a shot.
And then you're able to make sure that those sounds work in the context of the band.
Yeah.
Which is probably a relief too.
Exactly.
Because you're actually playing it and you know, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and plus, you know, working with Billy as well, because he was a big part of that also, because he was the guy that played all the parts on the record and knew the sounds better than anybody. So I'd go home, take the Fractal home, do some programming, come in, play the sounds, go over it with Billy. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's tweak that. And then they needed to rehearse. James was in Sweden, so I'd sit in with him. And that kind of went on for a few weeks. And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Where am I here? Oh, James will be out next week. Okay. All right. Cool. How much does this pay again?
So then he comes back and you're teching the tour. Is that how your relationship with Tool starts?
Yeah.
This is Chris Schleyer, bass tech for Tool, Justin Chancellor, and you're watching Dunlop TV.
I think that was my first introduction to that camp. After the Perfect Circle cycle ended, and I think Tool was going to be going back out. And as you know, like a lot of times, you know, it's just like all you know, and your name gets thrown around. So Tool was looking for a bass tech, and my name came up, and it was like, okay. I was actually pretty intimidated because Tool, man, they're like, wow, you know, fucking Tool, man. Can you say that? Fucking Tool. But loved it. Also, one of the best times of my life. was that period, back in the, what I would say, the OG Tool crew.
Yeah, and Justin doesn't just have a couple Boss pedals.
No, he's got quite a big pedal board. He uses every one of them.
We go through these pedals, right, through the box, to the Jensen splitter, which spits it back out into here, which we can go through these pedals back into the dirty head. So we got a dirty cabinet and a clean cabinet.
So were you learning like what each one does in each part of the song for that one? Or is it like, I just gotta keep this stuff going? What was that like?
Yeah, no, like some players, you do a lot of stuff for them off on the side of the stage as far as like pedal changes and stuff, or like MIDI controller changes. But Justin's doing everything live on his pedal board. So it was really just making sure everything worked. And the big thing with that was having fresh strings on the bass. A lot of bass players want to use the same strings night after night after night because they like that kind of muddy, sound. But not Tool, man. Justin's got that signature super springy bass sound, and he plays so hard that you have to change strings mid-show to maintain that tone. So when they go off and do their 10-minute little break, the bass tech's over there changing bass strings, looking at the clock, going, oh, and then stretching and getting it ready. So, I mean, that's, like I said, you have to adapt, right? So, okay, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do. Change bass strings in the middle of a set? Yeah. All right. Cool. Sounds great.
Was there a lot of like, let me rephrase that. Was there ever issues where intonation was like, oh my God, this string is just not taking, and it's just not seating right?
Yeah. Actually, that does happen. It's like you put a new set on, and it's like, oh, the G string, it just will not grab. It won't, it keeps slipping. I don't know, something's not right. I don't know if the winding is, whatever. But it's like, no, you've got so many packs of strings. You just open a new set and throw a new one on there. And you end up with 3 strings that never get used.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah. So that seems like that was a pretty hands-on, even though you're not doing the effects switches and the wah or whatever a lot of techs do. You're still, and you probably have to be laser focused on that too, right?
Yeah, well, you always should try and be focused on Otherwise, you will get bit in the butt.
Yeah.
As soon as you stop paying attention, something happens. As soon as you turn your head, and then by the time you turn your head back, it's too late.
Yeah. That's really cool. At that time when you started with Tool, what cycle was that? Were they already on the up, or were they still doing like because they're doing like stadiums now, but were they still doing like some club dates, or were they already?
No, it was all
upper end?
Yeah.
So how did the Schleyer-isms come out? Because a lot of people on the internet are really interested in the Schleyer that pops up in the Perfect Circle, Pacifier, Tool songs.
It was so long ago.
Fire, the bridge is on Schleyer.
The thing is, it wasn't Schleyer originally. Originally, it was Nobby.
Yeah.
He was his Tool's front of house guy. We call him Nobby. So Maynard likes to, keep himself entertained during the show, and he keep everybody else entertained as well. So he would throw out someone's name on the crew into the song lyric, and it was always Nobby. Nobby. It sounds hilarious on its own, right? Imagine it in a Tool lyric.
Yeah.
In a Nobby. And then one day, during the show or whatever, it might even have been rehearsal. It was Schleyer. I was like, wait a minute. Did he just say that? And then it's like, said it again. And then every show. And it was a perfect circle he did that. And with Tool as well. And even Pussifer. And I think trying to probably just embarrass me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely funny.
Yeah. I remember when it was happening, I would look at the Tool, back in the day. Everybody's like, what the fuck is a Schleyer?
Yeah.
Because the Tool fans, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. They're like obsessive,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what's the hidden meaning of the... It's just...
Well, exactly. What is the meaning?
What is the hidden meaning behind this song? That's so great, though. I'm sure there's some people that are going to watch this and go, oh.
I saw Tool this last year in Vegas, and saw Maynard afterwards, and he apologized because he forgot to throw a Schleyer in there.
Oh, wow.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time, for all time's sake. So when you're on the road with these bands, what's a typical day like for a band or guitar tech?
Typical day is if you've done a show the night before, you're probably waking up on a bus in a parking lot outside of the venue. The way it goes is Backline, which are the guys that take care of the band's gear, usually go in last. So we've got it pretty easy compared to everyone else. They call us the country club. Country club, huh? Okay. Coming in looking for breakfast and it's almost lunchtime, huh? Okay. So typical backline guys will wake up, 10 o'clock. You figure the band's stuff's going to be going on stage between 10 and 11. They've already got lighting and rigging and started to get audio going in. So you roll out of your bunk, coffee on the bus, straight to the venue, inside. Where's the bathroom? Priority number 1.
Yeah.
Priority number 2, where's catering? Yeah. Priority number 3, all right, we should probably go on stage and see what's going on. About that time, about 11 o'clock, should be coming off the truck onto the stage by now. So, and I'm being a little cynical, but we have it pretty easy compared to the lighting guys and production and all that. So they appreciate me taking a piss at myself.
Got it. So if you're one of the last ones, put your stuff on.
One of the last ones in and the first one's out.
And the first one's out.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that when they go see, especially something like a Tool show, Rammstein, AC/DC, where it's huge.
It's like we're the last ones in and the first one's out, and we still have a 12-hour day.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't have a 16-hour day like the lighting guys or video guys, right, or production. But 12 hours is still a long day. You gotta give us something.
Yeah, people don't realize what it takes.
It is.
Before the show, everybody's getting everything together.
Yeah.
The show happens. You might get a nap, right? Or if you're on stage, you're watching the bass player.
You might get a nap. If you're lucky, you get a nap. Yeah.
And then after, there's a whole nother work day after the last person leaves.
Yeah. Again, Backline, we have it pretty easy. Typically, our loadout is like 45 minutes. By the time the band stops the last song to the time we're closing the back door of the truck, it's not really much more than 45 minutes. Even on huge tours, you might get a 2-hour loadout, all in, all out, But Backline is a pretty coveted position.
Yeah.
Because, you get paid pretty well and, your hours are long, but you do what you love. You're in the environment that you love and you're comfortable in, working with your peers, and you're always learning from your coworkers because everyone's on the top of their game, right? Trying to be, hopefully. So it doesn't feel like work. It's just like what you do, right?
Yeah. Are there ever instances where...
Oh, I should probably answer your question. So okay, so picking up where we left off.
Okay.
Priority 3 was going on stage and making sure all the, stuff's coming in. So you're going to set up the band gear and you're going to get ready to do a line check. And then you're going to do a line check before the sound check. And the sound check is when the band shows up. So if the band's showing up at 3 o'clock for sound check, everything has to be ready. So no one's going to be like, oh, okay, it's time for you to set up that guitar rig. It's time for you to change those strings and like do this or do that. So you kind of just know if the band's going to show up at 3 for sound check, we're going to do a line check, an hour, 30 minutes before that. So everything needs to be ready to go by, say, 2 o'clock, right? And then it's just a matter of time, managing your time and prioritizing and doing what you have to do first and then doing what you need to do, before the show. Maybe you can wait a little later. Just making sure that everything is right when the band walks on stage for sound check, that they can just pick up the guitars and go. Everything's groovy.
Is it different with each band where, like, obviously there's a rhythm and you have to have some self-discipline to get everything going? You can't go fuck off at catering. You gotta be on stage. You gotta get going.
Yeah.
Is there a learning curve with each band? Okay, I need to be at this point at this time because the bass player might come out early, or he's notorious for coming out early and wanting that bass early, or is it kind of like I'm always ready 2 hours before line check or an hour before?
Yeah.
Line check?
Well, in a perfect world, you're ready a couple hours before line check. That all depends on the band, right? And what's on your plate. And then there's always things that need to be fixed that there's never enough time to fix, right? So there's always something to do. And really it's just prioritizing, well, this has to be done before sound check because he's going to need that. But this doesn't have to be done until I can do that. Like I'll change strings after sound check before a show because I've got other stuff to do. And a lot of guys are like, oh, I got to change strings as soon as possible in the morning. Yeah. I was like, no, you don't. If you know what you're doing, you stretch those things out, you time on right, spend the time getting it ready. It'll be ready by showtime. You don't have to. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like you have to kind of know how to prioritize and lay it out to lay the best plan of attack for success.
How did you develop that? Is it something that you had early on, or did it take you a few shows, few years to get that? And did playing in the bands like Prick let you know, okay, so I'm the guitar player. I wish I had this here at this time. My guitar pick's on the stand. Did that help you get ready for teching? Or did you just know?
Yeah, I think so. Because when I first started teching, I was like, I've never teched before. I don't know what a tech's supposed to do, but I did. I always text for myself, right? So that's basically how I look at it. Well, if I was the guitar player for this band coming in for sound check, how would I want it to be? Well, obviously it's how they want it to be, but okay, now you know that's the way it's got to be. And then also, well, what would I want? Probably the same thing he wants or she wants, right? So being on both sides does give you more perspective. Maybe more easier to kind of like read and like feel what they're going to need, maybe even before they know what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing is like you develop a relationship with a player for so long, then they know that you're probably already thinking about stuff that they're not even thinking about yet, that they're going to think about like in a few minutes. Right.
So it's almost like having a twin brother or sister.
Yeah.
Where you think while you're on the stage, you're thinking very similarly.
Yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there with them the whole time. Like I've got their mix in my ear. I'm listening to everything they're playing. They hit a wrong note, I'm there. I hear it. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, good job, man. You pulled that off. Yeah, wow. Yeah. So we all have an important job to play, part to play to make it happen.
Are there ever any instances where you have to take like a guitar or a Fractal or whatever on the bus, it doesn't get loaded in, and you have like it's a priority that you work on it? Has there ever been?
Yeah, sure. I've had guitars that like acoustic electric guitars with a little preamp malfunctions or go bad and the wire comes disconnected and it's like, oh, we don't have a day off tomorrow. I guess I'm taking this on the bus. Or we have a day off tomorrow and I got to take this to my room tomorrow to fix it before the next show day because it's going to take a couple hours, you know. So it happens. Amps blow up. Sometimes you can swap a tube out and it works. Sometimes you got to pack it up, ship it back to the manufacturer. Nuts crack, nuts break, you know, necks break, all kinds of things happen. I glued necks together in my hotel room on a day off. Headstocks, yeah, rewired, opening up like Nord keyboards because of the mod wheel mechanism came out. You know, it's just like, you got to do what you got to do because no one's going to do it for you. And there's a show tomorrow or tonight. So if you need to get into a taxi in Paris and drive to the other side of town to buy that last AX7 MIDI controller, that's what you're going to do. And you're going to spend 2 hours in traffic to do it.
How's the relationship with the manufacturers? Are they really accommodating to techs in general, or is it like, okay, well, you bought our guitar and you should have broke it? I mean, are they really cool? Like, hey, we'll get you a neck out as soon as possible, or we'll get you that bridge or that control wheel.
I've always had great relationships with artist relations. You know, I've never had a bad experience. Everybody's always been great as far as like getting what we needed when we need it. And even when things go haywire, something gets lost in the mail or, you know, gets sent to the wrong hotel, you know, everybody's professional and we're all have the same goal. You know, it's like the show must go on, man. We need these strings. How am I going to find mandolin strings in the middle of Nashville?
Well, that's good to know. I mean, you know.
You have a relationship with these guys too, because, you know, all these bands, they all use the same stuff. We're using Ernie Ball strings. We're using D'Addario strings. We're using Fender, Gibson, you know, whatever. So you have your contacts at the companies. So you've been in contact with some of these people for years. You know, you might email them and it's been maybe 4 years, but it's like, oh, hey, glad to hear you're still out there. You know, you're working for them now. Cool. Anything you need?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good to know.
That actually would be a fun job.
Yeah.
I always thought about that, man. It's like, if I got off the road, what do I want to do? Definitely not real estate. Artist relations. Yeah, that might be something to look into.
Yeah, you get to make everybody happy by
exactly.
check out this new guitar.
Exactly.
Look at
Yeah.
this new amp we're bringing you, and you're like the savior.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah, exactly. Being a guitar player too, it's like you really appreciate that.
You're doing a lot of social media as the angry guitar cat.
Well, that's his cat. That's his Vegas cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that come to be? Is it you just having a lot of fun with it, or what?
Yeah, you know, this whole like internet world and social media thing, right? Is like everyone like goes, oh, you gotta do YouTube videos. You gotta do this, gotta do that. Well, that's exactly what the internet needs, is another person talking about how they're such an they're, you know, they know everything and they're, you know, exactly. It's like, yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea. And there's so many great players posting videos of them in their bedrooms, just like kids, just like shredding, just killing it. It's like, no one wants to see an old man with a guitar playing, trying to like live his dream, shredding. I got 150 views. But then I started thinking, well, they're like, well, do a tech series where, you know, and guitar techs are often known for being a little grumpy, you know? backline guys in general, but probably more so guitar techs for some reason. I don't know why. I can't imagine why. But I got called the angry guitar guy for a while. Angry guitar guy. Angry guitar genius. Whatever. Right? And then it's like, well, you could name it that. Angry guitar guy, angry guitar tech, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, what if it was the angry guitar cat? Oh, the angry guitar cat. Well, what if it was an actual cat?
Yeah.
And I was like, what if it was Pedro, my cat? Pedro, the angry guitar cat. Now we might be on to something here.
That's cool.
Yeah. So Pedro's about 16. He's been my cat since he was a little kitten. He was rescued from a dumpster in LA. And he's always been there when I'm in my studio at home, working on whatever. He's always wants to be in my lap. Like most cats want to be in your lap when you're trying to work at the computer and they want to help out, right? So Pedro, producer cat, always there producing. So it just made sense that Pedro should have his own YouTube channel. And he's always like, loves to sing, but he's very limited with his, he can only meow. So he likes to do covers of songs that are easy for him to sing, right? So if you hear a song and it sounds like you could meow it, it's probably, you'll be hearing an angry guitar cat track. So he does these covers, plays guitar. He's pretty good for a cat. I've shown him everything he knows. Everything he knows, he learned from me. So, hopefully we'll see what happens. I think he's going to continue. He's getting kind of old and crotchety, but I think he's probably got a few more videos left in him. But angryguitarcat.com, I highly recommend you check it out.
What about TikTok and?
Yeah, it's on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, not X, nothing. It's just basically video. Any sites that you can, show videos on. Mainly YouTube and TikTok, but there is a website that will take you straight to the YouTube channel at www.angryguitarcat.com.
Chris Schleyer, thanks a lot for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's been fun, man. Thanks. Appreciate you having me. Nice talking to you.